smaller scale RAIDs, like you can RAID together a couple of SSDs, and now you're talking about, potentially if you have the network to support it, like, or direct attach like a Thunderbolt or something, you're talking over gigabyte a second of data. You're RAID 4 of them together, and you're potentially over 2 gigabytes a second of data. The big problem with SSD RAIDs is capacity. Compared to a hard drive, we get 16 terabytes on a single hard drive these days. But finding a SSD over 4 terabytes is generally a pretty tough deal to find one that's cost effective. So, yeah, no, they're absolutely usable remotely, but usually you're talking about those smaller RAID 1s, RAID 0s, kind of in local, direct attach type environments.
I'll throw out there a theoretical argument that I think is relevant. I would argue that a remote environment makes RAID either more important or less important, one or the other. And let me work this out. So like with our media hubs and, the way we set up remote environments, you've got a little server at every person's house, and that data is syncing between all of those servers. Mm-hmm. In that scenario, an individual RAID at an individual's house is actually less important because that data is already being replicated to other locations just because of the design of the system. Right. So in that scenario, I was actually working this out with one of our customers where they're setting that up as a RAID 0 because they've got a 2 drive, 14 terabytes. And they're like, well, if it's already copied everywhere, let me go for the speed. And they wanted the capacity as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So in that scenario, RAID in a remote environment, less important because it's backed up somewhere else. On the other side of that, in a lot of remote workflows where you don't have syncing happening between what you're working on locally at your home and a larger data pool, let's say you're working like a VPN, a push-pull, a proxy workflow where you're copying data and then locally working on that.
Yeah, or you have unique data.
You have unique data, which means a RAID is more important to be thinking about in a remote environment because you don't have the luxury of like a shared storage environment where it's centralized and, backup and data protection is, up to the post-production supervisor.